Hello, I thought we would do some crafty time and I wanted to spend some time with my favourite tin in my sewing kit, which is my label tin. Would you like to see it? Hold on a second, just gotta finish this knot. This is my label tin. It's got loads of little fabric labels in it, so at the end of any project where I make a bit of my own clothing, I can put my own little label in it. There were a few projects in 2024 I never got around to sewing little labels into, and because it's like the best part of the process, I thought I'd bring you along. This one says handmade. And while I sew, I thought I would answer some of your questions about the Year of Make Do. Now, if you haven't been here before, the Year of Make Do is a challenge that I set myself last year where I was like, I'm not going to buy any clothes, like not even secondhand clothes. I'm just going to see how I go, and if I really want something, I'm going to make it myself. I'm doing that challenge again this year because I kind of just enjoyed it and I got a lot out of it, and I feel like I had loads of exciting plans for 2024 that couldn't happen. So in 2025 I'm doing it again with some caveats. I'll leave the link to that video below, but I know a lot of you are following along with me, so I thought I'd take the chance to take some questions from you. I asked you on Instagram and also over on the Gumption Club Discord, which is my Patreon secret Discord, which I'm in like pretty much every day at the moment, to be honest. It's such a lovely little online community. So you sent me your questions and I'm going to answer them, and also just think about some of my biggest tips. Like if you are attempting the Year of Make Do or any kind of similar no-buy challenge, like what I wish I had known when I did it the first time round last year. Oh, the dress that I'm sewing this little cute handmade label into is this Empire Lion dress I made. Isn't it so cool? I'm sorry I can't find the fabric anymore. I'll leave some clues below and I'll leave a link to the pattern as well. But this is easily probably my favourite thing I sewed last year. And it doesn't have a label. Ow! The first thing I wish I'd known is that needles are sharp. I've totally forgotten I've got the best thing for this. What have I been doing? I got this incredible label fabric glue. So you can literally just glue the label into your clothes so it stays still while you sew it, and then it just washes out in the wash. Goddamn genius invention. Okay, we're in business. Are there any free resources you would recommend for someone trying to learn to sew? So I made a video a while ago called Lies You're Told About Learning to Sew. And I also made one about things that you don't need when you start sewing, the equipment that you do need and the equipment that you definitely don't need. So I'll leave the links to those videos below. But if I was going to start from scratch again, I would do everything the same. I learned from little old ladies on YouTube and some young people too. I have a playlist of beginner sewing videos that I really have found useful and inspiring, so I'll leave that below. YouTube is a great place if you learn by watching people, not by having things described to you. It's the next best thing to just diagram. This feels like incredibly trite to say, but videos are just like diagrams on crack. They're just so good for really seeing the motion and how people fit their hands in when they're trying to do stuff. It's just, there's nothing like it. However, apart from videos, I would also say DIY Daisy has a lot of free resources on her website. That is another big place that I genuinely learned to sew from, was from her website. Once you've got your sewing machine sorted and the stitches and you've made like a tote bag or something square, if you're looking to make 3D items, I would really start with her stuff. There's lots of free resources, but she also has a book called Sew It Yourself, which I adore. So that's where I would send you if I was going to send you anywhere. What tempted you the most to break the rules and buy? Oh, well, I've already told you the story of how I split my jumpsuit when I was out in London and was like hours and hours from home and was about to go to an event, but we made that work, so there have been worse things. But definitely the most tempted I've been, rather than the most desperate I felt, is there's a brand called Aesthetic Laundry who make all of their stuff themselves and are very ethical and like a wonderful little company. And the woman who runs it just seems like somebody I'd want to be friends with. And that closed down for a while during my Year of Make Do. And I was like, I've always fantasized about buying their clothes and I never have. And I totally could have. And I was like, God, this is my last chance to get something. But I held fast. I held my nerve. And it's okay because she actually started the business again recently. So I'm thinking that maybe I'm going to spend one of my tokens this year on something from Aesthetic Laundry, because I just think they are bloody wonderful. And it's so hard. The last year, loads of small businesses have shut down. And that's why I talk in my new video about it being okay, I think, for me at this point to buy a few planned, considered items of clothing from small businesses, because I do think that is important as well. That is part of the jigsaw that will fix our horrific collective relationship with clothes. How and where do you source fabric with sustainability and price in mind? Now, when I was a beginner, baby beginner, I would call myself now a confident beginner, I think. When I was that, I sewed a lot with secondhand fabric. Some of that secondhand fabric was still new because people hadn't used it. Especially, there's just so many unused duvet covers on Vinted, it's genuinely distressing. Like ones that are still in their plastic packaging. So I did that a lot, stuff that I felt like might otherwise go to landfill, and just like old bits of my own clothing, like just cutting them up and making little squares or cushions and stuff, just simply to learn and feel like I wasn't wasting stuff. However, now my main focus is on either finding really good quality secondhand fabrics that would otherwise go to landfill, of which there are loads on Vinted, distressing, but at least I can change a little bit of it. And also just buying fabric that is vaguely long lasting and biodegradable and breathable. So for example, this top I made, shall I give you a little twirl? Ooh! It's out of linen, and linen's one of the more sustainable fabrics that you can sew with. And I bought it from a small business, Merchant and Mills. So that's something. We don't have big supermarket, huge fabric stores in the UK like I think you do in other places like the US. You have like Joann's and stuff, right? Here, the offering isn't that tempting. I don't know if you've looked at Hobbycraft's, which is probably the most comparable thing to Joann's, Hobbycraft's fabric offering, but it's pretty shit. So I haven't felt that urge to buy like more mass-produced fabric, and I'm sure that some of the stuff I buy in more local shops is mass-produced, but like I am very half-assed. And I think that if I'm buying it from a small business and I'm buying it in small considered quantities for which I will definitely use, I see very little problem with that. I think when the home sewists are the people who are charting as producing the most clothing waste, then I will start to worry. But while that is still fashion brands, I shan't lose sleep over it. What's a starter mend you'd recommend for a newbie? Now, I've recently learned to darn, and I think it's really fun. But as a newbie sewer who was trying to mend stuff, I simply just made my own patches. I would cut out a square, fold over the sides, sew those round. That's a patch. Sew the patch on. All by hand if you want to. You don't have to use a sewing machine. So that is what I did. I don't even know how to explain it in more complicated terms because it's that simple. And it doesn't need to be something that you need loads of equipment for or anything like that. However, darning is fun, and I probably would have been able to master it at the beginning of my sewing journey. So do give that a try. There's loads of tutorials online, but it doesn't have to be that. If you just need a hole closed, you can just literally close the hole with thread, or you can make your own patch or buy a patch if you want. Actually, I make my own patches. I'm underselling myself here. These are Positive Panic patches, and I sell them on my website. So if you would like a really easy way to mend something, these are iron-on as well. You can sew them on, but they also have got iron-on backs. Then that would be the easiest way. Why didn't I think of that first? Okay, first one sewn in. Next, I am going to use one of these ones, which I thought was a really, really cool label, because most labels are like handmade, made with love, but this one is for ones where it says mashup, so it's ones where you've upcycled something, and this is one of the dresses that I have definitely mashed up. This used to be just like a straight down maxi dress with no sleeves, and I added a sleeve and then also a big bulgy skirt, so this definitely qualifies as a mashup, and I'm going to pop it in the back. God, it's so satisfying. So as high is genuinely a real thing. Next question. The idea of choosing fabric and thread is overwhelming. How do you choose? Okay, first off, we don't choose our own thread. Are you mad? I quickly realised that I couldn't be trusted with that task. So I advise whenever you are buying fabric, if you're in an actual shop, ask a shop assistant. They know like 10 times more than you. In the same way you go into a bookshop and the booksellers will recommend you really good books, they already have that information in their head, like people who work in sewing shops, they already know. So whenever I go in, I'm like, what thread should I buy? I think it should be this one. And they like always laugh at me and they're like, no, that doesn't match at all. Like, here's the one that you need. And I'm always wrong. And then when I use the thread that they have recommended, it's always spot on and like seamless. You can't see it at all. So that's what I do. And if you're online shopping for fabric, you can often tick a little box that says include matching thread for like £1 or £2, and they will include a matching thread for you. So I wouldn't advise picking like what thread to use yourself. You're not alone in this. Sewing is a profession and it's also a community, so you are just allowed to ask. When it comes to choosing fabric, I try and choose stuff where I already have at least 1 or 2 projects in mind for it. She says, I try and pick pattern first, fabric second, because I think then you actually get to use the fabric and you avoid having a stash. I do have a little stash going on over here, but I do know exactly what I'm making with every single item, or I have several options in mind for each piece of fabric, and that's my problem, is picking which project for which bit of fabric. But yeah, I also think it's knowing not only what patterns you like and what colours you like from the wardrobe that you already have, and the bits of your clothing collection that already sing when they're on your body, or they just give you the fizzy tingles in the tummy when you look at them, but also knowing what kind of like fabric consistency you'd like, whether you're really into just like cotton clothes, or you like rayon on your skin, or you'd like to work with linen more. Like going into shops, whether that is clothes shops or fabric shops, and just feeling the fabric really narrows down what you're looking for, and then you can start picking by pattern and colour and all that kind of thing. I'll leave some of like my favourite places that I get fabric online from when I do buy new fabric, or my favourite sewing shops that have websites. But yeah, not that I'm a massive expert in that. I've only been like doing this a couple of years, but I'll tell you what I know. It's not everything, but I know something. What is the most useful skill you've learned whilst making your own clothes? I think I will answer two parts of that question. There's 2 parts of the challenge. One is the making the clothes, and the 2 is avoiding buying the new clothes. The best thing I've learned about not buying clothes last year was that when I like something, it's often not the only place that the qualities it has exist. So if I really love a colour or a cut of like a piece of clothing, or I like the way it falls, that's all usually something I will be able to find again, either in years to come where I'm not on a no-buy, or in the qualities of clothes that I could make myself. And really trying to work out exactly why I've fallen in love with something and why I need it now is really good, because it's also the case that sometimes you're really attracted to a piece of clothing and it's not the first time. There's actually something similar in your wardrobe that you haven't been thinking about, or it has the same qualities that you already have, because often when we're attracted to things, whether that's like, you know, other human beings or pieces of fabric, there's a trend going on. You know, that we've all got a type. And just because the one in front of us looks luscious and appealing doesn't mean that the one at home doesn't resemble some of the same things that will bring you pleasure. Wow, that was relationship advice and fashion advice all in one. And then the best skill I have learned whilst making clothes isn't actually a sewing skill at all. It's more of an emotional skill. It's patience with myself. I hadn't been a beginner at anything. Well, I don't know. I felt like every time I started a new job, I was a beginner. But anything like big like this kind of craft, I hadn't been a beginner in a while. And I would often get frustrated with myself and have to give myself a little pep talk. And that's something that at every age we should be trying to cultivate. And this is something I talk about in my Elijah Told About Clothes video as well, is that I think the emotional achievement of like being patient with yourself and then learning how to do something you previously couldn't is really fulfilling, especially if you're somebody who's told yourself that you're not a practical person, or you're not clever enough to do this, or it's, you know, you're too clumsy to sew, or too, you know, I just think it's very healing to give yourself some grace and some time and actually try to do it. And also it gets you off a screen and out of your own head and doing stuff with your hands. There you go, that's the next label all sewn in. How cute is that? And my final victim is this colour block cardie, and for this one I know exactly what I'm going to use. These labels. This is such a great gift idea. You're very welcome to copy my friend Sana, but my friend Sana surprised me with these customised clothes labels that say made by Lena on them. Oh, and they've been such a joy, a smug little joy to use. So I think the back of this cardigan deserves one, don't you think? Okay, this is a good one. I've attempted to make my own clothes in the past, but I get a guilty feeling when an item looks bad on me or is too small and ends up in the failed projects pile. It puts me off trying again. Do you have any ideas that would rescue these failures from staying in the pile forever or ending up in landfill? I worry that they'll just end up in landfill if I was to donate them anyway. Also, no to making scrunchies. I respect that as a boundary. You don't want to make scrunchies out of your scrap fabric. That is a-okay. So the first thing I want to give you is just a little pep talk, in that we cannot fathom the scale of the waste and the human exploitation fast fashion is using right now. It is, I can't even bear to get my head around it. It is so much. So the fact that you're attempting to make your own clothes rather than paying companies to exploit other people is in itself absolutely incredible. And also the fact that the clothes haven't been flown around the world, like they fit buttons in one country and then they fly over an ocean to fit the zips. Like it's absolutely batshit crazy. So the fact that you're attempting this is inherently sustainable and amazing. The fact that you didn't do it all perfectly is only a surprise to yourself, doesn't surprise me, or doesn't surprise me about myself or other people. So that's inevitable. Everybody is doing that when they learn. And I think we also have to think about the fact that any skill, like learning and mastering any skill, involves waste. When you learn to drive a car, you're not driving anywhere. You're not actually transporting. You're usually going around in circles. Would you call that a waste? Maybe. When people are learning to be chefs, they probably waste a shit ton of food. When artists are learning to draw and they're bad at it, do they consider that a waste of paper? So this idea of waste as you go, just thinking about the fact that if you bought everything that you are now attempting to sew, thinking about how much waste that might create, not only in the fact that you might use the garment and then throw it away in a few years because it's really bad or low quality, but also because the amount of unused fabric these fast fashion brands use and throw into landfill just because they can't be bothered to deal with it. They burn it. They burn new clothes as well. They also like cut out the fabric in a really inefficient way. So like all of the pattern pieces have these big gaps in between. That's also a huge amount of waste. You wasting a couple of yards or even 5 meters of fabric learning how to make a dress, it just cannot be the problem, especially if you're learning a lifelong skill that then in the long term stops you from using loads of resources later because you get better at it. Do you see what I mean? Like we have to think in the long term, not project by project or day by day when it comes to sustainability. So I think you're doing just fine. And obviously there are ways to reuse those bits of fabric. If it's not scrunchies, I'm sure lots of people in the comments will have suggestions of how to use that fabric below. But even if you just use it as cushion stuffing or dusters or like muck cloths for the garage or the kitchen, it's all part of you learning a really inherently sustainable skill, and I don't think you should beat yourself up about it. What is your system for staying in the momentum of making and following through when finishing projects? I find the gap between visualizing and buying the stash, washing and ironing and all the other steps in the actual making can be really lengthy and have unexpected gaps and reroutes, which leads lots of people into losing momentum or getting excited for other projects while having a bunch of unfinished projects lying around. Any tips on how to combat this? Now, I don't really sew. I know this is kind of my job, but apart from what I'm doing right here, most of the time I'm not sewing in work time. Like I try and just, even though I'm freelance, I work 9 to 5 and I incredibly rarely use those hours to actually sew in. So a lot of the time I am doing projects over many weeks or months, and as I start documenting my process a little bit more thoroughly on this channel, you'll see how long it takes me to finish some projects. Months, sometimes years. So I totally get this, and the way I get my little mojo back for a project is going on Instagram, especially if I've used a pattern. They usually have a hashtag, and you can go through and look at how other people have made those garments and like what they look like when they're finished and how they've styled them, especially like a huge bank of them. It's so satisfying. Or if you bought them on Etsy, you can go through and look at all the other people who've made them on the Etsy reviews. And that gets me excited again because I'm like, look at all those other people enjoying this garment. Look how good they look. Look which fabric they've chosen. Look at this, or, you know, and that gets me excited to see other people doing it. And I almost get this kind of jealousy that I want the item, even though I'm already kind of making it. I've almost got the item. It's like the shopping high again, apart from you're already on the way. You're already going to get it anyway. So that I really, really highly recommend. And then also maybe thinking about where you fantasized about wearing that garment when you first picked it as a project to make, and either recreating that, so booking yourself, I don't know if you fantasized wearing it to a National Trust house or out walking in the hills. Book that thing in with yourself and give yourself the deadlines, and then picture the joy of wearing it. Or perhaps it's for the next party you go to, or you've got a wedding in the summer and actually it would be perfect for that. Pick an event, whether it's a self-imposed event or one that's external with other people, and give yourself that deadline and picture yourself in that item, and then have a little fantasy conversation where somebody goes, I really like your trousers, where did you get them? And you go, I made them. And the thirst for smugness really fuels me. That is actually inspiring to me. I like to feel really smug. The final label is complete, which means it's almost time for me to go, but let me just quickly answer a couple more questions. Somebody asked, where do you find the patience for sewing? My brain craves instant gratification. Mine too, don't worry. I need that all the time. However, what you might not realise about sewing if you haven't done it yet is that sewing has multiple stages, and most of the stages have their own little deep gratification in them, like gathering a skirt and then sewing it in. Beautiful. Cutting out all of the pieces for a piece of clothing and then lining them all up and then piling them all up and giving them a little iron. Throughout the process, there are loads of little zings for your brain to get. And also I often try on the garment way more often than I probably need to as I'm making it. One, to check the fit, but also because it gives me motivation when I can see what it's becoming and how good it might look eventually. It gives me motivation to get back down those stairs and move on to the next step and keep sewing. So there's that as well. And also the fact that you don't need to do, I know that a lot of people on YouTube will document the whole process of making an item, and they usually do it within a day or two because it's their jobs, but realistically, most people are doing it in little stolen moments, like half an hour here, an hour there, and that is also okay and means that you don't need as much patience as you might think. And then finally, somebody asked, I'm gonna wear this cardigan now because it's actually kind of cold. If sewing skills weren't an issue, do you think you could make all your own stuff and never shop again? I'm gonna say something incredibly optimistic here. Yeah, I think I could do that. I think I could. Maybe in my 40s, like once I'm better, if I feel like it, I would genuinely consider doing that. And if it's not a challenge or something that I pledge to do, I might just end up doing it anyway, because I really enjoy wearing clothes that I have made because I'm a control freak. No, it's just genuinely really creatively satisfying and makes me feel more like me. So if I had all the skills, I would do that now. But maybe one day that would be really, really great. And there's also an apocalyptic part of my brain that's like, maybe I'll have to. You know, it's a shit show out there. So make friends with a sewist is all I can say. No, I'm kidding. Thank you so much for watching. If you are doing the year of Make Do, or you're sewing curious, or you just want to shop more sustainably and link up with other people who also want to wean off fast fashion and start shopping secondhand or thinking in a different way about how they get their clothes and sharing clothes and borrowing, we have a big community on Discord. It's part of my Patreon, and we talk a lot about fashion and where we can source stuff and swapping notes all the time. And I also post the projects that I'm working on in there first. So if you're curious about what I'm up to this week with sewing, then you'll find out in the Discord. The links to join are below, and thank you to them for making this video possible. Oh yeah, I'll also leave the links to these patches if you would like one. Here's the Positive Panic one if you want that. Or alternatively, you can have a book one that says no books on a dead planet. There's loads of them. Thank you so much for watching. Frog Snog out.